Oiler Nation, I'm Deven Stover here with head men's basketball coach Charlie Ernst here on Oiler Outlook. And Coach, how are you doing this fine morning?
Well, I've had better mornings,
Yeah.
but that's the nature of coaching and sports, highs and lows, and it's the highs that keep you doing it.
It's true.
And it's the lows that keep you inspired to teach your players how you respond to adversity. And it's really when coaches, I think, are needed most when your team is struggling or struggling with defeat or adversity. That's when I think my job becomes most important.
Absolutely. And speaking on that, let's start by reflecting on last night's game. So you always emphasize the little things. I remember that specifically when I was a player, and it took control later in life after basketball. So were there moments where those details made the difference, either positively or as areas for improvement last night?
Yeah, most definitely. And I think the details, when you lose, you seem to focus on the details. And but I thought this, that game in particular was lost in the first 8 to 10 minutes of the game. Yeah, we made a run and give our guys credit for that. But I think when you're playing a team the second time around, you have them on your home court. They were kind of mired in a little bit of a losing streak of their own. And I actually, ironically enough, I mentioned this to our players in the locker room, how important the first 10 minutes of the game were. And so it's disappointing that we didn't play better in the first 8 to 10 minutes. I thought it gave them life. They had some foul trouble, and they went to their bench and played a few guys that really hadn't played in a long time, quite honestly. They're not a deep team, but they bought themselves some minutes to rest some of their best players for the second half. And had we gotten off to a better start, they would have never gone to their bench. They wouldn't have been able to. So give them some credit. I certainly don't want to tell you. I always give our opponent credit. I thought Thomas More, their poise under duress was impressive on the road. That's hard to do. I've coached a lot of games on the road. Our crowd got into the game. I don't know how many times it seemed as though they scored at the end of the shot clock. Yep. So they had the toughness and the poise to wait until the very end, make us defend them for the full 30 seconds, and then they converted. So give them some credit. But I thought it was the lack of little things in the first 10 minutes of the game.
So, Coach, your team has been known for our defensive identity. From what you saw last night, how did your team perform defensively, and how do you build on that heading into tomorrow?
Yeah, again, when you come off of defeat, you tend to, all of those mistakes tend to be magnified. When you win or make shots, you tend not to see them quite as glowingly. They exist, but they're dim.
Yep.
When you lose, they exist and they're bright. And I thought we had some poor communication at times. Some poor rotations, but probably the thing I was most concerned about and have been concerned about, but we've overcome it, is I don't think our press is affecting teams to the level I want to see it. It doesn't always even mean getting stops. It just means more disruptive. I thought Thomas More was able to easily flow into offense last night and turn it into a grinder. And it's not the game we want. And it's something we have to look square in the eyes and address. And do we have to press? No, but we invest all of our time and practice at it. And then when we're not able to do it in games, it's no different than any other defense. If you, let's say you were to trap all ball screens, and that's all you worked at all week long, And then the game happens and you don't ever trap ball screens. It's sort of what's the purpose behind you're better off spending time on things that you know your team's going to do. So I'm disappointed that we weren't more aggressive in our press. Not just on the ball, but our guys 1 and 2 passes away at rotating, working together, being more disruptive. That's why I'm playing 10 guys, 11 guys. So that's probably the thing I'm most concerned about, not only in this game, in the next game, but moving forward.
Absolutely. So previewing Hillsdale, they're a well-coached, disciplined team as well. So what are some of the key challenges they bring, and how does your team plan to counter their style of play?
Well, I think these two teams, Thomas More and Hillsdale, present very similar challenges. Physical, execute their offense really well, know who they are. You know, they're going to be very choosy. Probably they'll be more aggressive playing at home in terms of against our press than maybe they would on the road. I'm always interested in teams like this to see how aggressive they are against our press at the back end when they beat it. You know, so I think that that's going to be our main challenge, is how much of an effect will our press have on them. They didn't play Thursday, you know, so they've been preparing all week. They've been resting all week. You know, that's probably a topic for another day. You know, and it's we're not going to use it as an excuse. I would just say I'm disappointed that this situation occurs in this league. You know, there's an unbalanced situation there. I get that, but I've always said if a team doesn't play on Thursday, they should have to travel on Saturday.
That makes sense.
It's going to happen, the unbalanced. But what you can control is who gets to host then on Saturday. Like, in my opinion, we should be hosting this game since we played Thursday and they didn't. Regardless, they're a big challenge. You know, they're a big challenge even if they would have played Thursday. But they're an even bigger challenge as it is. And of course, we're coming off of a loss. So I think for us, it's all about the psychology. You know, we're not perfect. Our players aren't perfect, and nor is our opponent. But we've got to play with tremendous energy, heart. We got to trust one another. I didn't think our trust was very good last night. So to give ourselves any chance to go to Hillsdale and get a win, you know, we've got to get ourselves back to what got us to this point. And we will.
After last night's game, and we've talked about Hillsdale heading into this game tomorrow, how do you prepare your team to stay mentally tough and composed, particularly during those stretches when the game is on the line?
Yeah, you know, well, I think you look and say Thomas More gave us the blueprint. You know,
He did.
Yeah, we're not Thomas More, so you know we're not going to pretend to be. But I do think they showed a lot of toughness, a lot of grit, and a lot of trust in one another, that they didn't need to shoot quick. They didn't need to go solo. You know, and that can be very difficult on teams. So, you know, I really think that, you know, there's a lot of pressure on our team. You know, the expectations have continued to boil. And we got a young team, a lot of guys that have never been in this situation. And, you know, I think it's on each of us, from me on down to the last player on the bench. We kind of got to get back to and try to, you know, my job is to remind our players what makes each of them special. Because I think over the course of a season, guys struggle with their shot. You know, they struggle with their role. They struggle with a lot of things. And then they lose sight of who they are. And they get focused on the wrong things, you know. And early in the year, they were just focused on one thing, playing really, really hard and trying to be part of that 10 to 11 man rotation. Because when we were healthy with guys that weren't out with season-ending injuries, we had like 14 or 15 really good players. And our practices were really, it's almost like now that everyone's kind of found their spot, we've lost our edge a little bit. And some of our guys, I feel like, have lost their way slightly. We've got to get back to just finding our way. There's a reason when it all comes together, it works well. But if a couple guys sort of lose their way, then the team just doesn't function as well.
That makes complete sense. And then last question, Coach. As you prepare for tomorrow's game, what is one thing you want your team to embody when they step on the court tomorrow against Hillsdale?
Yeah, just get back to what's gotten us here, and that's just playing really hard. There's going to be mistakes. We'll make some. Our opponents will make some. Regardless of the outcome, you know, I want our players to walk off the court, you know, feeling like they gave 110%. And 110% in this system shows up in so many ways. You know, not just in our press, but running the floor hard every time, going to the offensive boards hard all the time, checking out hard all the time. It takes on all of those things. And, you know, you can forgive missed shots, you can forgive, you know, bobbled passes, travels, but it's hard to forgive effort. And it's hard to forgive finger pointing, you know. So as long as we're playing hard, playing together, playing smart, I can live with any outcome. I've always been that way, and I'll be that way tomorrow.
Yeah, and we love to see it, Coach. Thank you for joining us today, and we're excited to see the game tomorrow against Hillsdale Chargers.
All right. Thanks, Deven.
Of course. This has been Deven Stover and head men's basketball coach Charlie Ernst here on Oiler Outlook.